filing that just became public that sort of blew the lid off this is because the prosecutors, the FBI, are trying to keep this guy from fleeing the country, right? And so they have to write down the weight of the evidence against him in order to be like, don't just let this guy go, because he's got all these contacts in Russia. He's got all this family in Israel. He's got a ton of liquid cash he's sitting on. But in doing so, they have to, like, they basically run down some of the evidence. And what's the funniest thing about this story? It's an easy read. It's like 28 pages, but it's still an easy read because you're like, oh my gosh, this reads like it does read like one of those, like, a Russian spy thing, but like the spy's an idiot.
Spies
Because
like us, like the Chevy Chase movie. It reads like
right.
the Chevy Chase movie.
Whoever's writing this report is like, let me tell you how easy it was to figure out this guy was lying.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Next Level. I'm JVL here with my best friends, Tim Miller and Sarah Longwell of the Bulwark. We are just 4 days away from the South Kakalaki primary. It is exciting. The latest poll has Nikki Haley within 30 points, within striking distance. She's sitting at 65-35. But as our colleague Bill Kristol said this morning in his Morning Shots newsletter, which everybody should sign up for, ding, 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 Nikki, stay with it, because he thinks she's throwing punches and doing a good job, and she's already saying she ain't gonna kiss no ring, that Trump can kiss her grits. She didn't say that part. I think that's what they say in the South. I don't even know.
I don't think so, actually.
Anyway, Sarah, tell me what's going on, because you just did a South Carolina focus group.
Yeah.
You can give us some of the good stuff here. Don't make people wait until Saturday.
Just a little bit. I'm gonna have an awesome guest for the pod on Saturday. We're gonna do the South Carolina group. I mean, here's what's interesting to me. There was only one person in the group that was going to consider voting for Nikki Haley, and her reason for voting for Nikki Haley was that she wanted her to have a good enough showing that she would be considered for vice president. She still preferred Trump, but she didn't want Nikki to get embarrassed in her home state. It was nice.
What was the
lady.
screen on the group?
These are just two-time Trump voters from South Carolina.
Okay.
Right. So it's Republicans. But they, everybody, it's so funny. There's a couple things that do stand out. One of them is the way there's this thing that happens in the groups, and I'm struck by it every single time, is somebody kind of starts talking and they say, the Republican Party's really changed. And I don't know if I consider myself a Republican anymore because it's just filled with rhinos that you can't trust. Like, there's this part where I'm like, ooh, it's one of us. It's one of us. And then boom, no, we're the problem. This is a person who's like,
where
no,
do these
I'm
Mitch McConnells and Mitt Romneys and
right.
John Boehners come from?
That's right.
Who let them in?
You're gonna have to go listen to the episode for the there's some just like Lindsey Graham candy, and some interesting Tim Scott stuff. But I mean, like, look, on Nikki, there really is a catch-22 for these guys. I was on with Jen Psaki last night, and she asked a question that I think is a fair question, which is like, did any of these candidates ever have an actual chance, or was Trump just always the guy? And right, so Tim, that was my answer. My answer was like, yes, they did, but it was like a long time ago, and we've forgotten about when it was, and it was really DeSantis, and like he needed to be a good candidate with a good strategy. Instead, he was a bad candidate with a bad strategy. But like there was a chance. But now, like Nikki Haley, her speech was good. Like, I don't know if you listened to it, except for the parts where she was kind of like, Biden's worse than Trump. She threw those in there.
Except for those like 4 terrible sentences.
Yeah, there were 4 terrible sentences.
It was like 18 wonderful, joyous minutes, and then like 2 absolutely soul-crushing minutes.
That's right.
So
that's right. We'll get to that. Just let me make this one point, which is the catch-22 these candidates really do find themselves in, those when they go hard at Trump, which they have to do in order to draw a contrast and to criticize him. The base voters, the vast majority of them, the 65% that Trump is polling, and the voters in the focus groups just sound like this. They said, she sounds like a Democrat, and she's like a regular politician. She sounds like a Democrat because someone is paying her, and I don't trust her. And that is a lot of the stuff you hear about her, which is she reads, the second you start criticizing Trump, somehow just being critical of Trump is synonymous with being a Democrat. And that is a hard box to break out of. The problem is that nobody ever wanted a pre-Trump politician like Nikki Haley to begin with. She just represents too small a part of the party.
If Jen Psaki had invited me onto her show, which is a thing that has never happened once, and had asked me that question, I would have said the time to have beaten Trump is January of 2021, because that was the time to establish the predicate that Trump had lost.
Right.
Once the entire Republican Party stipulated to the fact that actually Trump was the winner, that was game over. Right? Because if Trump really was a two-time winner and really was the greatest president ever and really was everything we wanted and he's running, there is no argument against him. That's the big lie is the predicate for all of this stuff.
They self-checkmated. They self-checkmated.
That's right.
And Nikki is part of that. And, and this is like the frustrating part of all this. So my positive, people, you still get... People are going to get sensitive in 2024, and it's because the stakes are high, and I understand that everybody's kind of looking around the corner, just be like, who's going to shiv me, right? Who is secretly for Trump? And, so yesterday I very clearly wrote after Nikki's speech that, like, by the way, if you follow me and you live in South Carolina, you should vote for Nikki this week. You should vote for her, okay?
Yep.
Like, it's better.
Yep.
It's way better. Her speech, like I said, 80% really good and like right and correct criticisms of Donald Trump, and some fair points about how politics should be in the state of America, and then just some horrifically bad faith attacks on Joe Biden poked in there just to
in
remind
fairness to her,
she
doesn't believe.
Well,
right?
Maybe she believes them. I don't know. It's hard for me to tell sometimes because some of them believe them. Like this one, like Marco has been red pilled. I forget who I was listening to the other day. Somebody was acting like Marco's faking it. I was like, no, Marco is not faking it. Marco has, like, some of these people have been radicalized. So it's hard for me to tell like what if Nikki kind of like believes the bullshit that she gets fed at these at like the conservative confabs about the impending doom and the American carnage that's coming if we have one more year of Joe Biden, despite the fact that the economy's going good and everything seems pretty stable and normal in the country right now. So that part was bad, but even still, she's way better, and we're about to get into in the second segment all of the threats from Trump, even new ones, new dangers. It's scary as fuck. He's terrible. So like, yeah, let's hurt him more. And it's not a path to the nomination. Having Tim Miller's Twitter followers and black people, Caputo has this story about how it's not working. Nikki's trying to get black voters to turn out for him, and it's not working. But even if some of them voted for her and independent, like that's not a path to winning the Republican primary. But okay, we should go ahead and try that and let her continue. If she's going to continue to go out there and go on Fox, and I think the one thing that was notable yesterday was, she kind of tricked Fox into covering that speech, which is pretty good, right? Which is pretty good. So there's some number of Fox viewers yesterday that got to listen to her talk about Donald Trump being a liar and old and anti-American and in Russia's pocket and mean to veterans. And that's better than nothing. I'd rather them hear that than hear, whatever's coming out of Gutfeld.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That said, she has not conducted herself in the ensuing 4 months in such a way as to maximize her showing in South Carolina.
No.
And I just want to go through, because this is what I'm interested in. I'm interested in her performance relative to New Hampshire among all three groups, independents, Dems, and Republicans, because I suspect she's going to do worse among all three groups in South Carolina. And here's the breakdown, right? In New Hampshire, independents, she won them 58-39. In New Hampshire, she won Democrats 86-5, and she only lost Republicans 58-39. I think there's almost no chance that she matches any of those three numbers. And forget the breakdown, right? I mean, there will be the Republican share of the pie in South Carolina will be much bigger, but I'm not even dealing with that. Like, I just think among those groups, she has put herself in kind of a sour spot by doing the both sides and waiting so long to really go after Trump in ways that if she really had wanted to prosecute the case, again, still go vote for her. If I was in South Carolina, I would vote for her. I would be driving around to pick people up and bring them to the polls for her if I lived in South Carolina. But just as an analytical matter, I mean, she could have done better. No?
So, first of all, I think it's a little bit of an unfair comparison just because New Hampshire has this enormous culture of independents who don't register for the party. They go undeclared specifically so they can play in both races. So you have just in New Hampshire a ton more left-leaning independents who vote in a Republican primary. There was no Democratic primary to speak of, except Joe Biden still beat what's his name, but as a writing candidate, but like Dean Phillips, your boy Dean Phillips, Tim. And
he just poor Dean just wants everybody to get along, Sarah. Okay,
he does. He seems like a nice man. He seems like a nice, misguided man. But anyway, the point is that South Carolina and New Hampshire are just not states you can compare. But I agree with you generally that she is not going to do as well. But I guess I don't know what you're asking of her. You saying she should just go the full Chris Christie hammer and tong, which is sort of where she is now. And like, that's not a winning path. But also, were she just heaping praise on Donald Trump and whatever, that's not a winning path either. Like, I think that's the point. That's kind of the point Jen Psaki was trying to make last night, which I disagreed with, but I disagreed with it the same way you guys did. I just didn't go back as far as you guys. Like, our point was like, yes, all three of us seem to just have a different place where it's like, yes, you could do this, but it was just a long, long time ago. Like, there's nothing for her to do now because it is Trump's party, right? It is Trump's party.
Yeah.
The negative counter to that, though, is that, New Hampshire has this culture, but South Carolina, she was the governor. She was the governor, for 8 years. Well, I guess not. She left early, but for a term and a half. So, if you can't do it there. And the other thing about the numbers that is something I was kind of going back for project. I was looking at 2016. The total Trump share in 2016 was 45, and then the Cruz share was 20. Like by the end of the primary, if you added everything up, and like you look at those polls at the you say at the beginning, it's like 65-35, and it's just like. That's just it, right? Like it was,
that's
that's just kind of it. That's like the state of play. And it's actually gotten kind of worse since 2016 because some of those Cruz people are probably for Haley, really. And like some new people who are even Trumpier and weirder have come in. But like the best thing you can pitch here is 2/3, 1/3. It's been the same for 9 years. And really, that's like the best if you're squinting, because it's happening in a state where she was the governor and where some significant percentage of independents and Democrats who aren't even Republicans are going to vote for her. And, that's where we are.
Let me throw this at you guys. So we are now 12 years into a world in which Donald Trump is the only presidential nominee that anybody has known.
Not really. That's not exactly right. That's not exactly right. And in 2013, people did not know Donald Trump as a presidential nominee. You mean it's been 12 years since we had a different person as a presidential
Right, 12 years since we've had a different person as a presidential nominee for the Republican Party.
Mitt Romney was the last time that we really saw an alternative. Or that was the pre-Trump, right?
And he's our best case scenario for having a prominent person campaign for Joe Biden and do the WWF thing where that's Mitt Romney's music, and that was the last one. Yeah, okay.
So Chris Christie has said that he's not going to vote for Trump.
Yeah.
But he's also been like, I'm not voting for Biden either, which ain't going to cut it, bro. Also, I'm not sure that's true. I think there's a massive elite campaign right now to try to push Joe Biden out. And so I just think they're all part of that.
Yeah.
Can I just say one other thing about Nikki, though, which is one of I keep getting asked strategic questions. It's why I'm interested in this idea of like, what does Nikki do? Like, she should do this, right? Yeah. There's no, not to win. There's no winning here. There's no anything she can do. There's no like strategy talk. The only question is Nikki Haley, does she believe that Trump is the real threat? Or does she actually believe this nonsense about Biden being a bigger threat? Because if she believes Biden is a bigger threat, then she will ultimately endorse Trump. And if she ultimately endorses Trump, which let's just remember, you guys say there's like 100% chance she's going to do. And I think there's I'm down to I think like a 65% chance she does.
Okay, excuse me. And my chance was 93%, I think. It's
I'm down to 99.8.
Yeah, you did 99.5, right? So I think that there's a real chance. I don't think she'll endorse Biden, but I think there's a real chance that she doesn't endorse Trump. And I think that's really important because everything she's doing right now changes its valence based on whether she does or does not endorse him. Because the harder she goes now, if she endorses him, it's worse. Because she's leveled every criticism. She's gone as hard as she can. She said everything that's true, and then she still says, builds the permission structure to do it.
That's just the heat of battle.
No.
That's,
And then,
that's
politics.
Right. Politics ain't beanbag.
But if she
you
doesn't
can hear
endorse
this,
him,
right?
If she doesn't endorse him, she's done an enormous amount of good. Like, it is, we do not know yet whether she is hurting him or helping him. It remains to be seen.
True.
You were about to make a Mitt Romney point. You got cut off, JVL. What were you trying to say?
No, I was just going to say that if Trump wins the election, we will be at a place where we will have gone 20 years almost, right? It'll be 18 years, 17 years, which is nearly a full generation in which Donald Trump was the only Republican presidential nominee that anybody had known. That is, again, Banana Republic, Bolivia type stuff, and it's weird and crazy and do not like.
Even if he loses, that's true.
Even if he loses, that's true. No, that's and in fact, if he loses again, he will be the odds-on favorite for 2028. You people,
be the favorite.
You people are like, oh well, this is his last rodeo. Okay, sure.
I love doing panels where you get Q&A where people are so sad about 2024 and they're like, let's do 2028. What do you think, Tim? And I was like, Kamala against Trump.
100%. Good luck. Good luck.
That's bad.
All right, Tim, give us a word from our sponsor.
Yeah, we have a sponsor. The episode, it's sponsored by Roan Apparel. Do you want to look good without having to think about it? It's not a problem that I have, but then you need a wardrobe from Roan. Their men's clothing are versatile, durable, refined, easy to style, and help you exude confidence. Men's closets were due for a radical reinvention, and Roan stepped up to the challenge. Their commuter collection is the most comfortable, breathable, and truly versatile set of products known to man. They have products for every occasion. We're talking about comfortable pants, dress shirts, polos, blazers. They work as individual pieces or together. They have a signature 4-way stretch fabric that's breathable, flexible, and works everywhere from your commute to work to the 19th hole. It's time for unparalleled confidence without the hassle. Roan's commuter collection features wrinkle release technology and is 100% machine washable. Looking good is that easy. Treated with Gold Fusion anti-odor technology for more wears between washes, you'll be fresh and clean all day long. I got my Roan in the mail. You know what this is? You know what I would call it? They didn't tell me to say this. I'm just letting you know. This is what I feel. This is prime Zoom chic. I'm calling this Zoom chic. You know, if you're out there, if you're a professional and you're doing a lot of Zooms, Roan is right there. It's comfortable, but it looks good. It doesn't look like you just rolled out of bed. Highly recommend it. The commuter collection can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to roan.com/thenextlevel and use promo code thenextlevel to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to Roan, RHONE.com/thenextlevel and use code thenextlevel. It's time to find your corner office comfort.
Ooh. All right. Hey, JVL, you just made a point, actually, that it's the last thing I'm going to say about the South Carolina focus group. But this idea about Mitt Romney and how long Trump's been around, you know what was weird about the focus group? She was governor, to Tim's point. They don't really remember her as governor. Like, they know she was governor. And they know, they sort of think she brought jobs. Like, that was sort of the one thing, they had this sort of positive, like, I think, she brought a lot of jobs. But their feelings about her, their sentiment toward her, has been shaped much more in the last 8 years. And this is what's
didn't care about politics before it was wrestling.
That's right.
They don't care. They don't care about governing or her policies. They like Trump and the evil versus good, where they're on the heel side. That's what they like.
In the focus group, did you remind these voters of the Confederate flag thing she took down?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what did they think about that?
So this is, they were totally kind of neutral on it. Not really pro, it was kind of like, this is fine.
Oh. Well, there you go.
It wasn't
Sometimes
like they didn't think that made them like her more, but it didn't make them like her less.
I don't think that's that surprising because, again, the psychology of this is like people want to be mad at the latest thing that they're mad about. And the Confederate flag thing, that happened, you know, like if tomorrow Nikki Haley announced that she thinks that the Confederate cemetery in Bamberg should take down their Confederate flag, my presumption is all these people would hate that, because that would be a signal that she's giving into the libs in the present. But, you know, it's like,
But that she
it's
gave
not,
in
they're
to the
not
libs
still
in the past?
mad about,
Well, I don't.
you know, they're
We're
not
gonna
still
talk
mad
about
about
people.
Keurig. They're not still mad about
William
whatever.
Wolf is still mad about, like, no-fault divorce. We'll get to that in a minute. Alexander Smirnov. God, I love this guy. The FBI confidential informant who was one of the tent poles of the Republican impeachment inquiry against Joe Biden. He's this Russian fellow who claims to have done a lot of business with Burisma and have had evidence that there were $5 million or $3 million. I think it was $5 million bribes paid to both Hunter Biden and to Joe Biden. And what happened is the FBI got this stuff and was very skeptical and could not confirm any of it. And the Republicans in the House went crazy and threatened to hold Christopher Wray in contempt if he did not let them have the evidence from Alexander Smirnov.
Who's
we're
Israeli,
gonna
I
do
think,
this all
actually.
the time, huh?
He's Israeli with a Russian name. And we don't know what he looks like yet. So this all seems totally legit. I mean, how did the Republicans
And he said,
fall
pay
for this?
him. Pay that man his money. There. Now that I've gotten to that line, I don't have to do the accent anymore. So
Okay, great. That was from Rounders. This is
Yeah,
Rounders.
obviously.
It's a deep pull.
Deep
So
pull.
Rounders.
So Smirnov has now been arrested. He made it all up, is the answer. He made all of it up. It was all false testimony. Another thing that, you know, there's this great quote from Jim Jordan about how this is really the heart of our case here.
Credible
And
witness.
now,
Credible witness.
witness.
Jim Jordan called him.
Smirnov himself is being prosecuted for lying. And latest revelations are, where did he get all the documents and the information that he was passing along? Oh, from Russian intelligence. I mean, you know, who could have thought?
So,
Tim?
I was really riled up about this on the airplane last night because it's absurd, right? It is like it's below Veep, right? Like literally. I mean, like it's almost like they would have a guy that would put on a babushka. Is a babushka thing? What's the thing? What's that? What's the big hat? What do you call the big hat? You know,
That's not a babushka.
I know it's not. But what do you call
I
the
know,
big
like
hat?
the big beaver skin. The
Call
beaver
the
fur
big
hat.
hat.
Yeah.
Anyway, like they're dressed.
Sebastian,
like
can you effort that?
He's dressed up. Like he comes up with a name. It's like Yakov Smirnov is coming to you, and a Yushanka. I don't know, a Yushanka. That could be right. And he is making up this absurd accusation, you know, that Joe Biden was taking money. And do you remember the main claim here, which is like, you know, should maybe have raised a few flags, which was that he understands that Joe Biden and Hunter had so many shell companies that it would take 10 years to unravel. I remember hearing that when I first heard that, like that just sparked some interest in my brain, because I was like, really? Like, I mean, you could kind of convince me on the fact that maybe it was possible. I didn't think it was likely, but was there a 5% chance or a 2% chance that Hunter got some money and he was throwing a kickback to dad underneath? I didn't think that was happening, but I was like, that isn't an insane story, right? Like that's a story that could possibly happen, that it's happened to politicians before. This idea that Joe Biden is a master criminal. Right? And he has like a web of bank accounts that are so arcane and that are
You can
that
picture
so
this
complex.
in the movie, right? You've got in the movie, there's the guy in the chair trying to trace it. He's bouncing the call through so many reroutes, I can't even identify where it's coming from, right?
Yeah, and it's like the FBI. It would take the FBI and the CIA 10 years to unravel Joseph Robinette Biden's scheme. I mean, again, that seemed so absurd on its face that I just remember being like, no, this is crazy. Apparently the Republicans are so deep in their own bullshit and so deep in the wish casting and so deep in the Biden crime family nonsense that they heard that and they were like, star witness. This man is our star witness. The man with the vodka last name who has the most complex theory possible about Joe Biden's corruption. And we're going to push it out there. So that's the ridiculous.
And who the FBI thinks isn't credible because they can't confirm it.
Right. So
Wait,
that's the ridiculous. Go ahead, please.
Have you guys read? Did you read? So there's the court filing that just became public that sort of blew the lid off this is because the prosecutors, the FBI, are trying to keep this guy from fleeing the country, right? And so they have to write down the weight of the evidence against him in order to be like, don't just let this guy go, because he's got all these contacts in Russia. He's got all this family in Israel. He's got a ton of liquid cash he's sitting on. But in doing so, they have to, they basically run down some of the evidence. And what's the funniest thing about this story? It's an easy read. It's like 28 pages, but it's still an easy read because you're like, oh my gosh, this reads it does read like one of those, like a Russian spy thing, but like the spy's an idiot.
Spies
because
like us, like the Chevy Chase movie.
Yeah,
It reads like
right.
the Chevy Chase movie.
Whoever's writing this report is like, let me tell you how easy it was to figure out this guy was lying. Like, and this is a thing that I've heard the whole time. Like, this stuff is, you guys know from listening to me that I do not go deep on the Hunter stuff. I have not gone deep, but I still have heard through just the course of general osmosis of information that Hunter Biden has never been to Ukraine. Like, the FBI can just prove that Hunter Biden has never been to Ukraine, and that this dude's story relied on the idea that he had gone to this meeting in Ukraine and stayed at some hotel or whatever. But there's also all these other meetings that he'd claimed. He was also an informant for our FBI. So he's like a weird double agenty thing. So he has a handler that he's reporting this stuff to. And some guy at the FBI picks up a piece of paper and goes, these dates are impossible. You are not where you said you were at this. We know from your handler that you were not in the place that you claim to have been. And it's at one point they're like, we know from remarks made, and it's they've got 23 days in which he made remarks that anyway, it's a good read. You should go check it out. But the point is it's farcical, easily disproven. It was the reason that the FBI did not want them to run with this, as JVL pointed out. And then they did because Jim Jordan, all those guys desperately needed something. They needed the smoke. And you know why? I'm worried they're going to get validated by this. Because while you were apparently ripshit about this on the plane, Tim, people are talking about this, but if this was the Republicans wall to wall, the only thing anybody's talking about, what is happening right now? Their star witness, they are impeaching a president. They are trying to impeach Joe Biden on a witness that has just been proven to be false by the FBI. And it just feels like that's the only
partisan
thing.
overreach is really going to...
We did it. We started with Nikki. Why did we start with Nikki?
And a Russian plant. It was not just fabricated. It was fabricated by the Russians. This is where I move to the mad, because it's ridiculous, but it makes me mad. It's like Putin has found such useful idiots in these Republicans that he succeeded. He had the Dan Aykroyd of spies coming over here to plant absurd information about Joe Biden. And it worked, kind of. I mean, the guy ends up getting arrested, but Elise Stefanik, who went to Harvard, by the way, Elise went to Harvard. You would think that she would be a little bit more astute than this, said that this claims made by Smirnov could be the biggest corruption scandal in 100 years in America. That was Elise Stefanik's statement. And here's the thing, and Egger points this out in the newsletter this morning. She might be kind of right. Isn't this kind of the biggest scandal?
But not how she means. But not how she means.
Yeah, not the way that she means it. Isn't the fact that the Russians, in the midst of them invading their neighbor, in the midst of them assassinating their biggest political opponent, in the midst of them co-opting Tucker, plant a piece of information that is central to the impeachment effort against the sitting American president, and an entire political party runs with it and promotes that information, and it's on Fox all the time.
Care.
And millions upon millions of people believe it, and they will never hear otherwise. There will be tens of millions of people that still believe that there's a Biden crime family, and he got $5 million from the Ukrainian company. Because what? Do you think Fox is covering this today? Can we effort that for next week? See how many minutes Fox has spent debunking this story about the Joe Biden crime family?
How many stories is the New York Times going to do on this? Will they do half as many as they did about
I don't know, but New York
the Biden
Times
press conference?
They'll cover it.
Sure, they'll cover it, but I'm saying it'll be like a news story.
But shouldn't it lead the nightly news? Right?
It should be everything.
If you step back from everything, right, and it's the Russians sent a spy over to America. Well, I guess maybe he's American. The Russians co-opted an American double agent and had him plant false information about Joe Biden. And that information ended up being central to an impeachment inquiry, and leadership in the Republican Congress echoed it and pushed it for months as true. And yet it was totally fabricated, and the Russians are involved in fabricating it. And by the way, we're in the middle of a war with the Russians. Like,
and also, by the way,
what is the equivalent of that story?
Remember when Donald Trump then tried to dig up dirt on Joe Biden to leverage Ukraine, to not give them weapons before the Russians invade? Like, the amount of stuff happening here that is not, the first, when people, Russia, right? The first investigation, the Mueller investigation, that thing was hard to follow. I mean, I tried. Rachel Maddow would do those long, winding, things, and Deripaski and all that. I was just like, I don't know, guys.
Wasn't that hard? They hacked the email.
No, I know. There were specific elements of it that were that you could, but the whole thing that went on for a long time. There had a lot of characters, and it was hard. But there are like big things that have happened. Donald Trump stood on the stage with Vladimir Putin and sided against America's intelligence community on these things. Like, cannot we put these all together and see that Russia has an enormous amount of influence over Donald Trump, this Republican Party, and therefore our political system? And that, was this in JVL's triad? It was. I read it. I shared it. That, like, in no world from, like, nobody's ever written a novel like this, because who would believe it? There's nobody who was like, the American president was co-opted by the Russians and an entire political party on down. It's not like one nefarious
and everyone knew it. This is the part that gets me, right? I actually think, as somebody who loves the intelligence stuff and thinks of himself a little bit as an honorary old crow, this might be the most successful operation in the history of intelligence, because not only did they get to an American president and co-opt him and co-opt his entire party, but when they did it in such a way that when it came out that they did that, it didn't matter. Right? Normally you think of these things like, well, if the people of Bolivia find out that the CIA has been behind the junta, then the junta will be illegitimized and, it'll blow up our whole operation. It doesn't even matter, because the Republican voters and the American people are so effing stupid that they just like, yeah, sure, whatever.
They're pretty stupid.
Not one vote will be moved because of Smirnov. Not one.
Well, I don't think that's true. Not one. Couldn't you just, take it down to like a real place, okay? And also, listen, the entire part of it, I'm sorry, Republican Triangle of Doom time, there's an entire right-wing infotainment media, as well as a whole bunch of elected officials they're like, this isn't just like average Republican voters, like the NRO crowd. The guy, I got some guy who I think listens to this show, who's always emailing me about how wrong JVL is about everything. But he loves to tell me about the Hunter Biden stuff and how we're ignoring it. We've been ignoring the Hunter Biden stuff. And that is just an evidence of our bias and how, whatever. I don't think Hunter Biden, by the way, is like a good citizen. I think Hunter Biden is not a good citizen.
He's terrible.
Not a good
He's
guy.
under a couple federal indictments, as far as I know.
I know. By
right?
Biden's DOJ.
Yeah.
By the corrupt two-tiered legal system.
For breaking real laws.
Yeah. But the fact that, and you know what? We need to be the change we want to see in the world, guys. We should have done this segment on top. It is the level of explosiveness, the point where I care so much more about this than I do about Nikki Haley.
Let's just flip it. Can't we just flip it in post? Can't we flip it in post?
We need to own. We need to own what we did here. We need to own what we did here. And like, did you see Trump just as another tendril of this story? Which is Trump last night.
They did a Navalny to me.
This psychological jujitsu that they play, where because they're mired in grievance and because they're always the victims, if Navalny was a victim, then he must be like them because Trump is also the victim. It doesn't even make sense when he compares himself to Navalny. It just means like, bad thing happened to him, bad thing is happening to me. I am a martyr.
It's not jujitsu. I want to be very careful here and not do the voice. It is cognitive ability. Because there are a whole bunch of people who are so
fell for
stupid.
this.
No, but Elise Stefanik doesn't believe any of this. Elise is
I
just a
think she
political
does.
animal.
I think
looking
she
for
does. I think that
advantage.
she's gotten so deep inside this fucking bubble of nonsense that like they all, that anything that challenges their priors, it just gets rejected out of hand. I do think so. I think that she bought it.
Maybe.
I
But
think I think there's something really true just on the psychology of this. I've been in a few big Twitter fights lately with some anti-antis.
That's good use of your
annoyed.
time.
It's not. I understand that. Somebody should take my phone. But in doing this, one of the things that I get so mad at the fake equivalency stuff. They're like, well, this is the lesser of two evils, then Joe Biden is still evil. No, one guy is evil. The other guy's not evil. Don't tell me the one guy's evil. But as I listen, and some of these are with people that I don't think are bad people. And so some of them, we take offline and we handle them out of public view. But like the basic arguments that these folks make are they live in the conservative ink still. And so in conservative ink, the only thing that gets amplified and brought up is bad things libs do, right? And so this happens all the time where somebody will bring up sort of not obscure. It is a real thing that Joe Biden's administration is doing that as a conservative, that I would be opposed to. Listen, I think that, the student loan things I think are really bad. I think they've done First Amendment overreach things. Like there's all kinds of things that I don't care for. Kamala Harris, when she was a prosecutor, did, base loving things that I thought are super overreaches in terms of what the power she should have. Like I recognize those things. The idea, though, it's like, okay, if you love the First Amendment, you can't vote for Joe Biden because you think he's done something on the First Amendment. Have you met Ron DeSantis, who was definitely the person you preferred over Donald Trump? Like, it beggars belief. But they do live in a world where all they hear are these like negative things. And so they think they can build it up into an equivalent when it's just, there is no world in which these things are equivalent. Zero
Isn't
world.
it that you can't convince somebody of something when their salary depends on them thinking the opposite, right? This is you put it like they're still in
salary
conservative
and
ink,
tribe
and so they're
just
And want, desire.
Yeah.
I think that there is like there's a psychological need that the other side is also bad. Right? There's a psychological need for that to be true. And so I think that is a big part of it. I just, I literally, if the Soviets back in the 80s had like planted fake information about Ronald Reagan that resulted in Tip O'Neill trying to impeach him, I mean, literally, like National Review people would still be talking about that to this day. Like, it would still be a main data point against like ever being able to trust a lib again. And like that is like that happened yesterday, and I'm like alone on a plane, like angry typing to people and tweeting and messaging, and I'm like, why am I the only one angry about this?
It's because this is the world we live in now, and because these are these are the people. The people are the problem, as always. All right, we have another sponsor. This show is also sponsored by BetterHelp. When it comes to relationships, you might think everything about them has to be easy in order for it to work out. Sometimes it's the relationships that need a lot of effort to turn out to be the best ones. That's why therapy can be a great avenue to explore as you face challenges in your relationship.
Like
whether
Twitter
they be
fights.
romantic in nature, or fights over Twitter with your frenemies, or just dynamics with friends and colleagues, or someone else close to you. Therapy is a great way to work through your issues. I highly endorse it. I'm in like my third decade of therapy. It's really outstanding. It's helped me to hate myself like 5% less. I'm kidding. It's helped me to hate myself a lot less, and to prioritize what's actually important in the world, which is why I don't ever have Twitter fights with anybody. No judgments, but I don't ever do that.
It's all everyone's personal improvement journey.
If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Become your own soulmate, whether you're looking for one or not. Visit betterhelp.com/thenextlevel today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/thenextlevel.
Sebastian is really upset at me for not knowing that Kiss My Grits was apparently an iconic phrase by some lady from Alabama who was on TV in the 70s.
Yeah, it was a catchphrase. It was a 70s TV catchphrase. This is predates me.
I think it's funny that of all the things we asked him to effort, he's done none of them except for the Kiss My Grits.
Ushanka. He got Ushanka in like 3 seconds flat.
What is Ushanka?
The Russian hat.
Oh, okay.
Russian hat. That was important.
All right. So, speaking of people who should get therapy, we had a tweet from one William Wolfe, no relation to Winston, who said the following: wants to restore the American family, end no-fault divorce, end abortion, reduce access to contraceptives, require men to provide for their children as soon as it's determined the child is theirs, end, quote, sex education in public schools, end surrogacy, and overturn Obergefell. That's interesting.
Is this a random Twitter dude?
This is not a random Twitter dude. I think it's important. That's why I sent it in. I met this gentleman at TPUSA. He was a Donald Trump appointee in the Trump administration. He is now a very influential kind of young Christian man, right-wing TPUSA MAGA, kind of like a MAGA evangelical influencer who like was speaking at the TPUSA event. And I think that he would be likely to be a person in Trump 2.0, and that Slack was just a nice distillation of many of those same provisions, which I don't know, making the guys pay for their kids. I was for that one, so 1 for 7. 1 for 7. But
eradicating porn is another one that's on their list.
Yeah, but that is in the Project 2025 proposals that the Heritage Foundation is doing. Much of this stuff, this guy, I'm sure, is one of the people that is involved in that Project 2025. He is one of the influential young up and coming Trumpers. Our friend Samuel Alito, also, I don't know if you saw this, said
our friend of the pod,
Samuel Alito, said that he still is concerned about Obergefell as well, and that he's concerned that those with, quote, traditional religious views will be, quote, labeled as bigots and treated as such by the government. So our Supreme Court justice is not particularly concerned about enshrining discrimination against gays into the law, but is very concerned about hypothetical discrimination against religious people who want to have their views expressed. So, Trump, we've done this a million times in the pod. Like, this is not what animates Donald Trump, but these guys are are kind of riding in his wake in a very real way on this. And with Johnson as speaker and with the guys like Wolf out there, my alarm level on, do I think that Obergefell is going to be overthrown, and do I think that we're going to be ending no-fault divorce anytime soon? Like, probably not. Though in Alabama, they're banning IVF right now, according to the Supreme Court. So some of this stuff could come to pass. Probably not. But I think that it is like a threat of, we don't exactly know which crazy things would be implemented in the random mid to high mid-level appointees in a Trump administration. And we certainly know they're going to be crazier than the last batch. And so I think that is on the scary side of the ledger. And then on the politics side of the ledger, all of that stuff is about as popular as hemorrhoid herpes. So the Democrats should probably be talking about it.
You know what's not on the list?
What's that?
Restore the child family tax credit, which is the thing that Joe Biden did for America's working and middle class families. It is funny to, no, it's not funny. It's instructive that the list of things to do is all about taking things away and not about doing things to support, right? It's not, there's no like, hey, we're going to support families. It's mostly like, we're gonna
cash
Sharia
from the
this
deadbeat
shit.
dads. Taking cash from the deadbeat dads. That was the one item.
Sure, but we're gonna Sharia this shit, and that's gonna get us back to traditional families. And I mean, that's a view. That's a view.
You know what's interesting, I think, is how these people are worshiping a guy who's been married 3 times, who
King David.
Well, this is so. It is this is how they get to the King David stuff, right? This is the King David stuff is actually quite important here because that is how you say, no, I can justify supporting this guy who is a prime example of all the things I say we need to get rid of, right? Like he, I mean, I guess who knows
on the cover of Playboy magazine,
yeah,
banging porn
Playboy,
stars,
sure, right. Cheating on his wives, whatever. They need a way to say I justify that because he's like a Trojan horse for us to have power in politics. And you know what? They can get away with saying that because it's sort of true. Those guys will tell Trump he loves them. They love him and he will accept their love and he loves everybody who loves him. That's his only criteria. And so he will give them he will work with Johnson. He doesn't care. Trump neither cares about sexual morality, but he cares about it so little, not only that he doesn't abide by it, but that he doesn't care if other people want to try to force it on others.
Is that true though? I mean, he sold, in a way, I understand what you're saying, and it's at least half true, maybe more than half true. But look how fast he sold out the right on abortion nationally. And their response was just to say, yep, okay, sure, whatever he says, right? I mean, the hardcore pro-life Inc. leaders are still, itching to do a national abortion ban. But no way Trump's going to do that. Because he understands how unpopular it is. And at the rank and file base level, I don't sense any discontent over his total betrayal of their abortion fantasies. Do you guys? I just think ultimately they will accept whatever he gives them. This is just one story they tell themselves now to get through the problem, but they'll figure out another story when he tells them that this stuff is no fly.
I think there's something to that. I think it's more, these are mutually beneficial relationships that give everybody more power. Like it is additive to both sides and they have no trouble existing within the contradiction, the obvious moral conflict and contradiction of all, because it is about power in both cases. And as long as both sides help the other accumulate that, that's all they need.
He's also a narcissistic sociopath that doesn't care about anyone, but he sure as shit doesn't care about poor women. And so, I don't know. If he got in there, he's in there. I think that if
they're super hot, he might care a little bit.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. His concern about the abortion ban stuff right now is that it's preventing him from winning.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
If he had won, are you telling me that he definitely would not sign a 5-week national abortion ban? I don't think that. I don't necessarily think that. What if he thinks that will help him keep power and stay for a third term, or he rationalizes it some other way? It's how he does that.
Or he trades it away to Mike Johnson to keep them from, exposing, to make sure they provide cover for him.
I'm sorry. I was only saying that he wouldn't sign something like that because it's so unpopular that it would prevent him from. It would cost him power. And I think that is likely to remain true for the foreseeable future. But yeah. Yes, point taken. He'll sell anybody out for anything.
The other thing I think is just worth noting about the Sharia MAGA bros is just how extreme all this stuff is. Like again, it goes back to what we were talking about at the top about how the voters didn't really care about the specific policies. Like you could imagine a world, as a gay, metropolitan, non-fallen Catholic, I'm probably not going to be for most of the stuff, but you could imagine a set of proposals of a normal world version of William Wolfe, right? Where instead of
I wrote a whole book about that.
Yeah, there you go. Instead of end surrogacy, it's should we need to make some reforms to crack down on people that are abusing it, taking advantage of young women, and we don't want people selling wombs, right? Whatever. You could imagine
don't want
that.
it to be predatory.
Yeah, we don't want it to be predatory. You could imagine various, kind of religious pro-family reforms that are probably would not be my policy preference. We're going to make
adoption more widely available to people, or help, if people are looking into surrogacy, actually help them with adoption, make adoption easier, whatever. There are things that they could do that would be additive to the idea of, because there is this whole world of there's a weird supply and demand thing where lots of people want to adopt children, and it's extremely difficult to do.
Yeah,
and crazy expensive.
And with Jane Coaston on the Daily Pod, I was like she brought up something I was not familiar with, which is in evangelical world, is the concept of snowflake babies, which are like the unused embryos from IVF that like somebody that wants a child would then take that, right, and have it implanted. Like, anyway, that all feels kind of weird to me. But like, if you're pro-life and like you want babies and you want families, like you could imagine a policy around that. Like, let's create
so long
funding.
as it's anti-vax and anti-mask.
Right.
That's the other key.
Let's create
We're
a
only pro
funding
some
solution.
lives. We're not pro all the lives.
Anyway, let's like fund these efforts, right, to make it easier for people who want to be able to go get babies, and so like embryos aren't being wasted. Like that's not what it's
all about.
Control, banning, Sharia. That's what the proposals are.
This is the who was it? Was it Jonathan Haidt who's wrote about this, like the authoritarian personality type? And the Republicans are in the process of gathering onto them everybody in American politics who really is into the gestalt of authoritarianism. And that's why the tankies are basically Trump supporters, right? I mean, he's taken all that stuff from the horseshoe and centralized it in one political party. Yeah. And it's not great. All right, Tim, you had fun, happy stories from USC, and I'm here for it.
I just think that JVL's going to love this little anecdote so much. And I want to start it by saying that I'm doing a study group, a fellowship at USC. And so I have a group of
fellowship or
no, just like a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed political people who are like the type of student who's like I'm
academic fellowship.
Yeah, I'm so into politics that I'm going to do a bonus class with Tim Miller and like go hang out with him for a couple of days, because that's how much I like politics. So this is a self-selecting group. We have to appreciate that. The types of people that do that. They showed up in the rain yesterday. It was raining in LA. And I appreciate them all, and I don't want to betray any confidences. I think some of them listen to this, so hello. I love everybody, but it was worth sharing because we were laughing about it in the group yesterday. That one thing I was interested in. There's certain things I'm teaching. There's certain things I was trying to learn. One thing I'm trying to learn is how bad is the campus culture these days as far as silencing is concerned, as far as people not feeling comfortable to share their views. I was just kind of intrigued by that. This is anecdotal. It's one group, but we have our first session and the group's pretty mixed. There are no like MAGA red hatters, but there was some Trumpers that voted for Trump. There's some libs, like not a huge Biden crowd, but like some of them liked Biden. He was getting a lot of B's when I was asking for the grades. There's one person who like is self-identified as like a Barry Weiss centrist, moderate, contrarian, concerned, concerned about woke culture, et cetera, et cetera.
I hope I get invited to do one of these fellowships.
Yeah, you should come. You'll be surprised to learn that person was the most vocal person throughout the entire group. There are several young centrist white guys who had no problems sharing their feelings. They had a lot to say. One of them was pro-Israel. He was happily bragging about how he's been posting on Instagram about Israel, and some people don't like it, but he doesn't care because he feels strongly about it. Good on you. And, after that first class, at the second class, I just asked him, I was like, well, I was just intrigued by all of this. And so I was just wondering what they feel about campus speech and just USC. But this group, no issues. They flagged one issue with a professor who had been asked to move to Zoom because he like confronted a group of Palestinian protesters and was like, I want everyone to die. And like he was claiming that he was talking about Hamas, that he all wants to die, but the way he phrased it was like not that great. And so, they moved his class to Zoom. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, that feels more like a judgment issue.
I had a chem professor tell us that when I was a freshman.
That feels like
nothing
a
to do with
issue.
politics.
So anyway, I enjoyed the group. They're great. Maybe there is a crisis of silencing happening other places, but I'm proud to report that at USC, that is not a problem. At the fellowship that I'm at, everyone feels very free to say their piece.
Be back next week with another Next Level. In the meantime, go to the YouTube page. Hit the follow button, subscribe us there. If you're on podcast, we are really lagging in reviews. Could use some 5 stars, could use some written reviews, maybe even that mention me. I am here. I am part of the Bulwark. I exist. And And also, go over, if you're not already signed up, go over to thebulwark.com and sign up for all the stuff we just push out and give away. I write a newsletter that Sarah will read sometimes. Bill Crystal and Andrew Egger write great things. Just Mark Caputo giving dispatches from Magaville. Joe Perticone did an amazing piece about the Trump sneakers yesterday.
That guy gets better and better, man.
So
you
good.
gotta sign up at
thebulwark.com. It was so
You gotta sign up. Go sign up at thebulwark.com. You'll get all of this stuff, like 95% of it for free. If you want to subscribe and give us money, that's great. But the truth is, you can freeload and get almost all of it.
Oh my God!
Anyway,
you're the worst at business. Just telling people to freeload. Do you know what else is going great?
What?
Tim Miller's flagship podcast.
What's going on?
So good.
Crushing.
Can I yell at our audience for 1 minute?
Yeah.
Because I've been looking at the numbers, and Tim's podcast is doing bonkers numbers. Do you know what the softest episode you've had yet is? The Dean Phillips show, which was the best episode. And it's because people looked at that and went, oh, I don't think we should platform Dean Phillips. All of you people, if you skipped the Dean Phillips episode, you go right now. You go to your room and you pull out your iPad and you watch the Dean Phillips episode because it's good for you. Or you're grounded.
Thank you, David.
We'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.
Bye.